how are you? And who are you? So I would start my live videos and my videos, and whenever I introduce myself in business circles and I say I'm a satisfaction expert and a yoga teacher who's empowering disillusioned people to build a satisfied life that they don't need to escape from. That's kind of what I've labelled myself as. And it's quite interesting doing this video in this room. This is my childhood bedroom. So I've kind of gone backwards in time a little bit. And I've been really thinking about the concepts about identity and the labels that we put on ourselves. So if you've read my blog this week, you'll see this tale of the first time I did any, I kind of call it proper yoga. So this is yoga which is, which I guess, we're going deeper than just asana, just the physical practice of yoga. And I did the foundation course in 2010, might have been earlier than that actually, with my yoga teacher, Debbie Farah, who is still my yoga teacher. And one of the first exercises we did was to pair up, and the idea was that one person would ask the other person, who are you? And if you were the person giving the answer, you'd give an answer. And the reply would always have to be, but who are you? So you give another answer. And then the question came again, who are you? It's interesting when we try and define who we are. How many of those labels are not really who we are? I think a huge number of the labels are who we are in relation to other people. We're someone's brother or sister or parent or child, friend, colleague, partner. We define ourselves by our jobs. When someone says, who are you? How often do you say, I am a accountant or a builder or a yoga teacher? We define ourselves by the way we look, by the bodies that we are in. I'm a woman, I am white, I am blonde-ish. We define ourselves by where we come from, where we were born, whether that's the town or the county or the country or the continent even. We define ourselves by things that we like. The football team we support, the music that we listen to, the culture that we absorb. We define ourselves by our politics, even if it's not really our politics. But how much of this is actually who you are? How much of this is actually just what boxes you tick when you're given a form? How much of this, deep down, is who you are? And it's quite interesting when I've been going through this rebranding process with the amazing Nikki James. If you're in business and you want to do anything involved in branding, speak to Nikki James. And I've kind of had to go back into myself and go back into my past. I've done that a lot over the last year or so. I've done courses in, I've been honing my PR message, I've been doing courses in speaking, and I've seen the branding process as well. And trying to there is a little bit of trying to pin down who you are in all these processes. And I don't know if you can even do that. But what we can do is we can look at our past experiences. We can see who we were. And it's interesting to think about who I was in the past, what I loved as a child. And sometimes this is something I suggest if people are looking for things that give them satisfaction. Well, how about thinking about the things you did in the past as a child? There's so many things that we do as a child and we don't do them as adults, and we forget how much joy that they brought us. But the flip side of that is quite often we stick to doing the same things that we know gave us pleasure in the past, and we forget that actually in a way we've grown out of them. So I have this kind of odd relationship with music, and live music in particular. It's something that kind of defined my marriage in a way. You know, it's something that me and my ex-husband used to do a lot, was go to live music. And when we separated, it's one of the things that I almost gave up. You know, I still did a little bit, but it's something that I've done a lot less of in the last 5 years. And obviously the last couple of years, no one's done a lot of live music, right? But I've had to, you know, I kind of very much still get tempted now. And I buy gig tickets, I've been to gigs, I still go to gigs. But even now, even though I know, and I'm quite perceptive of myself, I don't so much enjoy the gig anymore. I enjoy the anticipation of the gig. I enjoy buying tickets. It's a very odd thing. But actually, and when I left my husband and I looked back and thought, well, where was I not happy? One of the things that I realised was that quite often I'd go to gigs and I would be kind of halfway through a gig thinking, is it time to go home yet? I'm ready for bed. And I sort of still do that a little bit. And I have to watch myself because, and you know, checking in with what things do you actually really do still love, or what things are you still doing because you've loved them in the past and you just keep going down that well-worn pathway because that's brought you joy before. Doesn't mean it will always give you joy though. So coming back to who I am and who are you, it's interesting to think about the way things change and the way things stay the same. There's a lyric there, isn't there? I can't remember who that is. There are things that are the same but different. And ourselves, there's something really, really fixed about the real kernel of ourselves. That we cover in all these layers of who we think we are. These kind of items of clothing almost, these masks that we wear. Sometimes different masks in different situations to say we are different people in different situations. And yet there's something that's ever changing about us that can't be pinned down. That you wouldn't necessarily want to be pinned down. So for me, the question of who are you, and the question of finding yourself, which is the fourth element of satisfaction, and it's the ethereal one, it's air. It's a little bit flighty. And I love this one because I'm an Aquarian, so we're air signs. But you know, air is a very definite thing. It's a very definite concentration of chemicals. And yet it's ever changing. And it can move. It's always moving. It's always the same, but it's never the same. And that's the same for ourselves. So the key part of this for me, and what's really changed the way that I approach myself, is this slight separation between that kernel of who I am and those layers. And some people will struggle with this disconnect, and I'd certainly say if you're not, you need to have a bit of solid grounding in yourself to start to really pick away at these questions. Because if you're not careful, you end up unanchoring yourself from the floor and floating away. And we don't want that. We still have to live in this world. And that's what those layers are there for. It's the way that I present myself to the world. And I'm becoming more and more conscious of the fact that when I am in a certain situation, this is the person that I want people to see. And there's an element of me in it. Even if it's not true, there's always an element of truth in the lie you choose to tell. So it's not me. There's no way that anyone can really know me. It's hard enough to know yourself. I think I'm going to leave it there. I would love to know what you think. And if anyone's posting any comments, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's down to my internet connection, but I'm not seeing any comments. So I'm just hoping that this is recorded and gone through, because I kind of like what I just said. So please put some comments, even if you're watching on replay, and if you have watched live, I will come back to your comments, because I'd love to see what other people's perception of what the self even means is. I don't have the answers here. This is not something that you can find a definitive answer to. It's air. You can't pin it down. And that's what's going to make Find Yourself such an interesting investigation for me, as much as for all my clients, when we start to dig into it. There's always provoked some really interesting conversation within what was yoga and happiness, and what will be the satisfaction revolution. And I definitely want to do some courses that delve into this in a lot more detail. It's going to be really, really interesting to have those discussions, and I'd be particularly interested for people with different perceptions of their identity, their own identity, and people who identify in different tick boxes, and what your thoughts are on this sort of thing. So please leave me a comment, please have a discussion about this. And otherwise, I'm going to see you next week for another satisfaction session. Until then, have a wonderful week, and I shall be back soon.